Hey there, Zlatko here from Taco Agency and the host of Taco Talk Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. On this episode, I had the pleasure to chat with Ryan Smith and Chris Casale from Araxum. Araxum helps businesses get more customers through digital and content marketing. They also host their own podcast called Digital Marketing Happy Hour that focuses on marketing, technology, and all things life. I am personally a fan of the podcast and I listen to a lot of the gems they drop about content marketing and other topics. Make sure you check that out on all podcast platforms. Ryan and Chris worked together 10 years ago and always had the similar passion to help small and medium-sized businesses get off the ground. That is how Araxum got started. They touch on how blogs were not the focus for businesses back in the day and how that mindset had to shift as time went on. The best way to reach out to Ryan and Chris is through LinkedIn. Check the show notes and you will see the relevant links, and make sure you check out their podcast. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy listening to this episode. Boom. I think we're good to go. All right. Well, pleasure to have you guys here, Chris and Ryan. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves in terms of what you guys do, your shop that you run, and kind of give us the ins and outs. I guess start off with maybe Ryan or Chris, whoever wants to kick it off.
Sure. So we have a little website called Araxam. It's araxam.com. And there we really have it as your marketing and technology resource. You want to learn more information. We provide, blogs. We also have our own podcast, which is called the Digital Marketing Happy Hour. You can find that in all your major platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, and so forth. So that is just a little bit about Araxam. Both are passionate about digital marketing. We both have been in this space, I think, combined over 20 years now, and then some. So, getting a chance to be on your podcast and to talk more about digital marketing is, for us, it's not work. This is fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Ryan said, the genesis for our podcast came from, Ryan and I started working together about 10 years ago. And we've worked at two companies together. And then eventually about 5 or 6 years ago, we're like, we've helped these companies. So we just kind of wanted to start our own thing to help other organizations be successful. And no matter where sort of our paths took us, we'd always try to meet up for a beer once a month, at a bar and just kind of hang out, shoot the shit and whatnot. And this conversation always came back around to, marketing and helping businesses kind of get off the ground. And we realized it was just such a joint passion for us that was sort of the reason behind launching the website and launching the podcast, is that we really just wanted to help organizations. We found is that most small to medium-sized businesses, most entrepreneurs, startups and whatnot, they typically, occasionally there's a unicorn that is good at everything, right? They're good at technology, they're good at finance, or they're good at marketing and sales, but that's rare. Most of us come from it where we sort of have one skill set that we're very, very good at, right? Maybe it's the technology side of it. Maybe it's this, if let's say you're going into food and beverage, maybe you're an excellent chef, but you don't necessarily know all the other pieces, but you need them to be successful. Well, we just kind of wanted to show them that it's not as daunting as it seems. There's lots of great free tools out there. There's lots of support among the community. And so we wanted to kind of surface that stuff to help organizations be successful, because we have a lot of passion in those success stories that you see out there of people that were scrapping it. And then, the overnight success, as it were, when they had that moment and everything kind of came together for them.
Absolutely. Thank you for kind of explaining that. I think that's truly helpful for something like this. So, can you guys tell me a little bit about how you guys came to kind of build out what you're doing at the moment right now with the Raxum, and where you guys really thrive to help businesses in terms of, the marketing aspects, and what are some, I guess, even free tools that people can utilize on their end in terms of, kind of getting up and running and then kind of progressing to some of the more robust stuff.
So I think that we had probably been talking about it for probably, I would say, months. It was probably years before we got started. But Ryan and I had an opportunity about 4 years ago. A lot of cities have this now. And here in Tampa, Ybor City has what's called the Entrepreneurial Collaborative Center, which is basically an extension of the county government to help. They host SCORE, like the Small Business Administration, to kind of help organizations get off the ground. And they were hosting a series of workshops that were trying to teach some of the basics of digital marketing. And we were asked if we could lecture it, essentially present to that audience. And that was sort of what cracked the door open for us, because it allowed us to showcase some of the skills and knowledge that we had been doing in the private sector for so many years. But I think the thing that was so eye-opening for us was getting to work hand in hand with those businesses and seeing the challenges that they were faced with. We decided to launch the website, and then years later the podcast, to provide some of those tools and resources to organizations. And Ryan and I's story, we sort of landed in the same spot of being passionate about helping businesses with growth. But we came at it from different angles. My background, I came up through the computer science side of things. I was a software developer for years, and actually ended up in the web side, which is how Ryan and I met. Some companies, they would put the web team with IT, and other companies, they would put web with marketing, which I would argue is where it really belongs. And that was where Ryan and my path crossed. So I came at it from that angle. I'll let Ryan give you his story.
Awesome.
So exactly, we both complement each other. I really got into the digital space back in '06. So I was creating for companies I was working for their first Facebook page. Then later after that was, okay, you need a blog. Well, we don't know if we want a blog. Let's start one. And so about 3 companies in a row, I was creating their first blog. And then Chris and I started collaborating when we started finally working together for a tech company. They were very resistant of working, trying to create a blog. And finally we got it. It started gaining organic traffic. Like anything, you have to be consistent creating this content. We're talking 2011-ish, right around there, 2012. And then all of a sudden they had all these different products. Well, we want a new blog for each product that we have. I'm like, whoa. But they ended up having, they was like, wait a minute. But they ended up having 3 different blogs at the time. So it was tough to get that buy-in. But once you got the buy-in, and I think, which is big for a lot of businesses, especially when it comes to organic traffic, you absolutely must manage expectations. So if you're going to create content and get in that content marketing game on the free side, this is a race that is a marathon. If you want to quickly create content, get your brand out there, and you want to be number 1 in the rankings, then you got to put your money where your mouth is. Go and invest in Google PPC. Then you can get ahead in the rankings. And so that's a big thing. I think a lot of businesses that we've worked with when it comes to creating that blog content, we learned this along the way, is when you're talking to your boss, or if you own your own company, you have to manage your own expectations. You're an entrepreneur. So in that case, then it's important to know, okay, it's going to take 6 months minimum. Don't even look at your traffic. I mean, you want to look at it, but don't grade it just, then and there. So that was a big thing that we learned along the way. And kind of what Chris was saying, we started off really just local. And I think that's good for anybody, is find the free tools you have in your local community if you don't have it, especially in a time like this where a lot of businesses, are all working remotely. You can, the places that were physical and brick and mortar, they're now, go to their website. They're still offering free resources. A lot of them is just, virtual now. What we learned is, speaking with entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized businesses, they were passionate about their product and their service. They know how to create it. They know their product in and out. It was amazing to me, and you still see this in 2020. A lot of people don't know how to market it, how to build that brand awareness, drive the traffic. And for us, Chris and I, that was kind of second nature. And, I think developing the product for me is always the tough thing. I can market it, just give it to me. So working with them, these small to medium sized businesses, that was something we came across. And Chris and I we started thinking like, I guess there's something there. This was even 5 years ago, whatever it was, 6 years ago. So for us, it was working with the community. And that's kind of where all this started coming from, of creating this website. And for us, we've been doing this for 10 years, and we haven't even tried to profit of any tools at all. Courses, I've done workshops, we've done it. And really for us, it has just been always, let's get the knowledge out there. So that is kind of, how we came about meeting each other. My passion's always been marketing strategy, work using social media marketing, using content marketing. I know, Z, you're big with HubSpot. We're big fans of HubSpot. I've actually had the chance to go to Cambridge, and I've toured HubSpot several years ago. and their big conference is Inbound, which I would argue is probably the best marketing conference on earth. There's a lot of great ones, but this is
Wow,
definitely on the
that's
short
a lot
list.
to say. That's a lot to say. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It is, and they keep getting better. And it's unfortunate that through this, COVID-19 experience, that those conferences, at least in 2020, are not going to happen in person. A lot of them are moving. Talk about digital transformation, transforming to virtual only, which will be nice, but you can't replicate online what you get being at those conferences with it. So yeah, that's kind of where we've been. And in some of the tools, you talk about free tools, HubSpot, goes by the freemium model. And I
Right.
think everywhere from, getting into, I know they have a CMS, they have a CRM. I tell every single person, if you don't have a CRM, there's no excuse. You don't need Salesforce. You
Right.
can use HubSpot's CRM that's free. And as you build your base, it's a freemium. I think you get couple thousand contacts you get. Well, by the time you're
Right.
getting up to 2,000, hopefully you're making enough money that you can then invest and upgrade in
It's a
their
good problem to
system.
have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. Let me ask you on that whole blogging model. What's the tool that you guys used at that time in like 2006 or 2011, I think you said. What did you guys use? Was it Blogger? Was it WordPress? What was it at the time?
Yeah, WordPress. WordPress, because as Ryan said, we needed free tools, right? And at the time, and this was really more in Ryan's camp, because I at the time, and even now, I love the operations side of things. So it was really trying to figure out how are we going to solve this. And he's like, I'm trying to get this blog started. How do I get the back end working? And they didn't want it. The company was afraid, quite honestly, because
Right.
of the resources needed. They really didn't want to put a lot into it. And so I was allowed to allocate some time to get it started, but it wasn't my primary focus. So Ryan and I would have these sidebar conversations like, how the heck are we going to do this? I'm like, well, we're going to start with free tools because we have no budget. And to this day, they're still using WordPress as it's gotten bigger and bigger. So what does that say for free tools, right?
Right, exactly. And honestly, till this day, I mean, we work with my agency works with a lot of primarily Shopify, e-commerce stores, and I still till this day will always say that Shopify is not a blogging platform. That's why you have WordPress, and that's why even now, I mean, like Webflow's coming around and all these different tools for something that's a little bit more like drag and drop type of scenario where you don't require so much code and different things. But at the end of the day, I think WordPress is still kind of the head honcho when it comes to all the SEO factors and everything that you want to consider when you're actually putting in that time to put together that content. So I think that's really, really awesome. And for you guys, how many I guess small businesses or clients at the moment are you guys working with on a day-to-day basis, and how does that work for you guys? How's the time allocated? Is it mostly, focusing a lot of the stuff on the podcast now, and that's really how the information gets delivered? Or is it more so, going into, well, not at this moment, but kind of, working people virtually and kind of getting them geared up for everything?
The podcast, without a doubt, I think is the best way to get it out there. We have been surprised. Digital Marketing Happy Hour is, I think we're in over 30 countries now where people have listened to it. And one thing and by the way, Chris and I are both analytical geeks. Like, I love getting into Google Analytics and looking at the data. And so one of the things I always like to look at is the different countries that people are coming to. In my history, going back a little bit, international marketing is, I went to grad school. And so I have a master's degree in international marketing management from Boston University. And that really I was always interested in travel and international, and what's the best way to travel is have somebody else pay for you to travel. So that was really one of my goals of doing this, is to have businesses do it. And I actually had the opportunity a few years ago to do training workshops, and I went over to Dubai actually twice and did workshops over there. And one thing I found out, even in the Middle East, and then looking at where people are listening to our podcast from, cultures are different, right? Everybody's problems are the same. It doesn't matter what you look like. Everybody has the same problems. It's in the business world anyway. And one of the things we found is generating brand awareness. People still struggle with that, how to do it, generating leads, what do you do with the leads? How do you nurture those leads? That's a big thing that I found, where everybody loves to go right to the direct sales. You see it on LinkedIn. You connect with somebody and they hit you with a pitch about buying their service. Like, do you know anything about me? And I'll get
Right.
these like, freelancing IT services or some
All the
white
time.
labeling, it's things that I'm not even in the market for. It's like going to a bar. You go next to a bar, you see a pretty woman, you sit down next to her and you say, hey, want to go to the chapel and get married? It's like, no. Buy a drink.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation.
That's a good example of what I feel like on LinkedIn sometimes, man.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are the things we run into. And I think just looking at the analytics, and you say the platform we found is podcasting. And I just like yours, it's fantastic to have these conversations. So the biggest takeaway I've found in my journey is everybody has the same problems. It's whether it's in our backyard of Tampa, Florida, or or we're speaking to people through the podcast that are in, Nairobi. They all
Right.
have the same problems. And so these are things that we've just kind of learned along the way. And so podcasting right now, that especially in this where you can't travel and so forth, it's the best platform to get your message out.
I agree. I 100% agree, and I think it has a lot to say also when you do figure that out, when you do go across other countries and different things, and you see that everyone does have the same problem. No one's figured it out to say, hey, I have the special sauce that works every single time. Like you said, building brand awareness, you have to spend money on brand awareness, and I think for us, like when we talk to a lot of our clients and different things, and again, we're e-commerce, so it's like everything is sell, but it's like when you get to that point where I always say you can do all the paid ads, you can do all of that stuff, and that's great, but that stuff at some point is going to go away if you run out of money. The minute that you start investing into your content and into your blog, into everything you're doing, that's going to stay on your website for the rest of the time, and it's always going to be able to be ranked within the Google pipelines and different things that allow people to bring that traffic back. So if you could write a really compelling piece on people or on your brand, and you have good writers in-house, then that's really where the value, at least for us, like I have this amazing head of marketing on our end, and we have like 6 writers, and when they do something, it really comes from a place of, hey, it is a little bit on the SEO side, but we also want to make it fun and happy and quirky so that people could actually remember us for something. So it's just like, I think that's really where people have to start, if they haven't already, start shifting into that world and saying, you know what, this is going to be a blog that's going to be, really, really sticking to it's stuck to your business. It's not some ad that's going to go away after 24 hours type of thing.
Right. And I think most of the time you see, or at least one of the things that Ryan and I have seen continuously is especially from the sales side, people tend to be very solution oriented, right? So they want to jump right in and here's the solution we've come up with. Well, the first step is problem identification, because if you're not solving the right problem, then it doesn't matter how much energy you put into it, right? So it's taking the time to make sure you're solving that problem correctly. And we've seen so many people that'll say, I got a budget, I wanted to buy Pandora ads, or I want to go get a billboard, or I want to do a radio spot. And it's like, hang on, is that where your audience is?
Right.
And most of them, they don't even know enough to look at the data. 90% of developing an effective campaign is all in the planning stages. It's all in sifting through the data, making sure you've properly identified the problem, identify what your goals are going to be, identified your audience, and then developing a strategy that helps meet the audience where they live, work, and play.
And everyone's customers, in my opinion, live in different places. There's obviously some overlap, but if Pandora works for somebody, it might not work for the other person. And I think that's
and just because it has a huge reach doesn't mean that reach will be successful for your audience, to your point.
Exactly.
And you're talking about segmentation, when saying, part of your audience could be and I think that's big too. And to Chris's point, when you're asking these questions, a lot of times they're like, you get a shoulder shrug, or you'll get the response, I don't know. And you kind of have to go back to it. Well, it's like, well, why don't you know? You need to find these out. And you keep, as a business, you have to keep challenging yourself. If you're a solopreneur, small business, or your department, you have to keep challenging them to keep digging deeper. It is marketing, and understanding your audience is an onion, and there are a ton of layers. Most people look at it, or they'll peel one layer back. It's deep down. And tools that I really love that give you the information is, talking about free tools, is Facebook. And I'm not even talking about the Facebook ads standpoint of it. a lot of people don't even look at the page insights. Now, you have to have people liking your Facebook page to get an understanding of that. But you can go to the page insights and start getting an idea of all the demographics and interests that people have on Facebook. You create that. Open up your Google Analytics. Look at the interests there. Google Analytics will tell you people are in the market for something,
Right.
So then you look at that. You put all that down. Now you start looking at other different areas. If you're a B2B or B2C, I highly recommend that people put in the LinkedIn tag on your website, even if you're not buying ads. Put that on, because it will start collecting information of everybody that is visiting your website. And if you're a B2B company, a lot of these times you can't just start running ads. You need to have that pixel, that code on your website to start collecting data. Sometimes, depending on the size, it could take, a month, 90 days, who knows how long.
Right.
I'm all about put all that on there through a Google Tag Manager so it doesn't slow your site down, and start collecting the data. So that way you can effectively, once you start looking at the demographics on Google Analytics, Facebook, LinkedIn, so forth, now you have a better idea of who your audience is. Create a persona, an ideal customer avatar. You give it a name, Jane, Mary, whoever, and you create it as if that is a person that you're talking to in real life, as if they were talking to you right now. And you almost want to paint a picture. What are their hobbies? What are they like? Because when you get into the paid part of like a Facebook, you can get very granular in who you're targeting. We're targeting, divorced females with a college education who love dogs, whatever it is. If you find out that's who you're going after, depending on your product and service, now you can get really granular, and you will end up having a lower cost per acquisition than when you do the whole pray and spray approach, and something's bound to stick. Yeah, eventually it will stick, but it also costs you an arm and a leg, to get that information. So those are some of the ways, kind of better to understand your audience, and using some of these free tools that you have at your disposal that sometimes it's almost like it's so obvious that people forget about it and don't even use it.
Exactly. And then that's kind of that takes me kind of to my next point, is like a lot of that automation, a lot of the stuff is right in front of people too. Like Google Tag Manager, you literally just drop in all your pixels, everything that you need in there, and it could be literally one thing on your website that gives you all the data that you need. And even if you just spend a few hours out of the month and every 30 days or every 60 days and just going through that and combing through it, and I think it's well worth the time, and also better money spent, right? Because at the end of the day, especially hard times like this, people are pulling out loans and different things to make sure that their businesses keep up and running. And at the end of the day, if you have that data, you probably have really you have much higher chances to get those people to buy into your business and into your brand or whatever you're selling, whether it's a course or anything like that. So no, I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really good advice for anybody. Are you guys, how many people are currently on your guys' team at the moment? Is it just you two?
You're looking at it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
we
it.
work with a lot of third-party contractors, but we feel like we play to our strengths. And so the things that we don't have in-house, we leverage experts for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And do you guys delegate a good amount of your like day-to-day work to a lot of the contractor stuff, or where's your guys' main like focus on a day-to-day, if you want to run me through it really quickly?
Right now it's
do.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. I was gonna say it's content creation. I mean, that's our big thing, and you can't. I don't like sending out through like Fiverr and having somebody do something that we can do, because all of our stuff is the knowledge and experience that we have accumulated over time, both successes and, as you say, in the failures. I've learned more from failures than I've ever learned from successes. So you can't replicate that from somebody in Bangladesh who's doing it for you. You can have them do maybe some graphics and things like that. I think is great. But when it comes to the content creation, we do the podcast. That's the big thing. And, you take one piece of content and then you redistribute it among multiple platforms. So part of our strategy, and this is something we do in-house, part of it is it's a passion. I kind of like doing, we record, then it gets obviously edited, podcast then becomes a blog post. All right. So then we create a whole blog post. with a link to the website or to the website, but also links to the podcast as well. Then you take, you create an infographic or some sort of picture that's great for social media, embed that as well inside the blog post. Also use that on Instagram. So really, it's something that we do in-house because I feel nobody cares about your product or your stuff than you do, more than you do.
Right.
And we enjoy it. To me, it's not work. It's fun. And you talked about data at the end of it. Is the things I love is after everything's published and deployed, emailed out, is now going back and looking and seeing what the responses were, because it
Right.
helps you move the needle forward the next time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I think we've seen, and I'm sure this is true for you as well, with small to medium-sized business owners, the one thing they all have in common, and you have to have it if you're gonna take that leap and launch a business, is passion. And it doesn't matter if what they're running is a restaurant and they're very passionate about cooking, or they're an agency and they represent clients. They're very, very passionate about what they do. It's no different for Ryan and I, right? We really love this side of things, and so there are certain things that we've acknowledged that's not our strength. Ryan and I are not graphic designers, so we leverage outside agencies and whatnot for that. We've got one that we work with that's been fantastic. But then there's other aspects of it. Like, I'm not an audio engineer, but I geek out over going through after we've recorded for the podcast, because I like to mix in some sound bites and things like that. And I care so much about that content that's something that I'm doing right now. Now, am I going to do that forever as we start to evolve into doing more coursework and stuff? No, of course not. But to Ryan's point, the content is really the heart of it, and it's authentic. You're talking earlier about some of the posts and whatnot that you put out, and the way you add sort of your flavor to it. Well, it's very much the same with us, and there's a level of authenticity there. The most recent podcast we just launched, the title of it was something along the lines of "Pivot Like Ross for your small business to survive and thrive," which is a Friends reference, right?
Yeah,
and it's just cheesy enough that it represents Ryan and I, but I think it's relatable and it's authentic to who we are. And so we try to make sure that all of the content that really lives through in it, which is why we're probably doing more of it than we will end up doing in the long term.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Do you guys still get to a lot of the stuff, like using project management tools and different things like that? Do you guys want to speak on kind of like the core tools that you guys use internally, whether it's, for editing or anything like that? Sure. Is there anything on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's primarily free stuff. Asana is the primary program we use for project management, just because we found it so easy and it integrates with so much. But we tend to leverage Dropbox for file sharing. We're using Google Drive, particularly Google Sheets and Docs, for sharing of information and putting together project plans and things of that nature. We're using HubSpot. We're on a free model for that as well, for sort of managing leads and things of that nature. Audio editing, I'm using Audacity, which is a free open source tool. I'm trying to think of anything else you can think of, Ryan?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I can think of too is Trint, Trint. Now that's not free. It's a premium, but it transcribes. So all
nice.
of the and so using that is to create the blog posts. Try to couple of different transcription services. Nobody is perfect. You have to read everything over again, but the information is definitely, I would say probably 90% correct. And then you have to change something. Sometimes it puts a period where maybe a period shouldn't go and correct some words. But other than that, that's part of the content of the podcast. Those are definitely some of the services. Again, 99% of everything we just said are all free tools. Only one so far has been a premium.
Even on the data side, we're using Google Analytics. We're still using WordPress to this day to host blogs, because it's got so many great third-party plugins.
True.
So.
I love it. I love it. And so I do have a one question that I kind of try to ask a lot of the guests. What is the one key component, and you guys might have covered this, that sets you guys apart from any other, kind of content agency or content shop, providing services to clients? Is there anything that you guys would say, hey, I know you guys obviously have the passion and everything like that, and you guys take your shit really seriously. But what would you say is like, when you guys came together, it's like, we haven't seen anybody do this. Let's make this, let's work towards this, or let's make this kind of our core competency about why people come to work with us, or why we would want to go work with somebody. Because I think from our perspective is, as much as clients choose you, you have the right to choose your clients. Absolutely. As well. So we want to make sure we're always working with people that have the same kind of, not same ideas, but more so have some sort of compatibility with each other to say, hey, I like you even just as a person, and we might not agree on, certain business things. We could still keep our relationship going, even if we don't work together, type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to tell you it's that we're more authentic or that we're more passionate, but I think that's true of a lot of people in the space. For me, I think the one thing that's really set us apart, I think Ryan mentioned earlier, is we're both data geeks. I don't like to make decisions based on opinions. We always sit down and say, hang on, what does the data say? And if we don't have it, how do we go get it? And so our big selling point with businesses is, how do we sift through the data you have, or collect the appropriate data so that you truly understand what the problem is and who the audience is, and then we will work with you to develop strategies to solve it.
I would say we're not, Chris and I don't reinvent the wheel. All right.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you anything that's going to be, different than what Gary Vaynerchuk or Seth Godin, for the most part, is going to say. That's okay. And here's the thing, this is where imposter syndrome comes in. I don't know if I can do it, this and that. We're all unique. We all have personalities. Nobody here, whether it's on this podcast or around the world, we're not made for everybody. Okay.
Right.
People, if you bring out your personality, that will gravitate, and you use your knowledge and the passion, all that, it will bring people to you, and vice versa. So what stands us apart? It's our personality. There's only one Chris Casale. There's only one Ryan Smith. Well, there's 50 million Ryan Smiths, but there's only this one here.
I was just about to say, there was probably a lot more Ryan Smiths out there.
There actually are a few other Chris Casales, if you can believe that.
There might be.
I think I might be one of the only unique ones here then.
You might. Well, that's true. Yeah. So that's it. It's and I would say to everybody, don't be afraid to get started. Are you going to say something that 500 people before you said? Good chance, very good chance it's going to happen. But that's okay, because people are drawn to you by your passion, maybe by how you tell a story, how you teach, how you educate your product or service. That's what's going to draw people. And a lot of times they're not buying necessarily the product. They're buying the people behind the product, and I think one of the greats of this is Simon Sinek. And his book that shot him through, like a rocket was, it starts with why. Is that what it is? Right. I just lost it for a second. Yeah. Chris and I both had a chance to hear him speak in person, and he's a phenomenal storyteller, and people have replicated what he has done. But really, that whole concept is, it's about people buying who you are. What's your why? Why are you doing this? You could have the same widget 50 million other people have. What stands out from you? A lot of times it's your passion. It's your customer service. Are you doing the right thing for your employees, for other people? People read into that. People see that. They're not afraid to go and learn more about you. I've worked with a ton of car dealerships, and that is an interesting industry. Cars are a necessity.
Yeah.
Unless you live in Manhattan. Outside of that, cars are a necessity, around the world. Everybody hates car dealerships. You go to it because you have to go to it. What's interesting is, and I always try to tell all the car dealerships I worked with, is you have to humanize your brand. People get anxiety. It's like coming to the doctor's office. They don't want to do it. They all feel they're getting ripped off. So create videos, create content to show that you're not the cheesy, slicked, used car salesman with a slicked hair back, but you really are family friendly. You give back to the community. Don't just do it. Put it on your website. And what's interesting is, and I see this a lot with car dealerships, maybe even more so than other industries, the about us, about the dealership gets a ton of views. You get that a lot with that because people want to learn more. How are you different than somebody else? How do I know I can trust you? And that's what they go to for. Can I build trust? Can I trust you that I'm going to pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars? It's one of the biggest purchases people make in their lifetime is buying a car. So I think that's how you distinguish yourself. Rarely is somebody going to come to your dealership because they want that specific make and model,
Right.
especially in an era where it's a recession and all this stuff. People still need cars. People are still buying cars right now. And I think it's important that, but they're going, A, what can they afford? But B, who can they trust?
Right.
And so that is a big part of how do you distinguish yourself, whether it's, through consulting or you're selling a product. It's through your personality.
Who would you say? Sorry, I just wanted to ask quickly. Who would you say has the best About Us page in terms of the car world? In your opinion, have you done any research to be like these guys did it right?
Nothing that super stands out. I think you can find, what I would say is, when you look at the bigger groups, and a lot of these, especially in Florida is almost all owned by major dealership groups. So the days of the mom and pops are slowly going away. It's actually unfortunate.
Right.
So you're seeing huge dealership groups that might own 5 dealerships, 50 dealerships all throughout several states. Those are the ones that actually do have some of the best About Us pages. And I'm not going to promote any specific ones, but go
Right.
check out some of those. Those are the ones that you can look at. The ones who have the worst are usually the mom and pop, and they're the ones who need the most help.
Right.
I would say that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to know. And then just in terms of just kind of closing this up, and I don't I don't want to kind of keep going on the same thing, but in terms of just overall kind of next steps for you guys in evolving your podcast and everything that you guys are doing, where do you guys what are some of the big changes that you guys think are going to, or what are your predictions are going to happen in terms of all this, COVID stuff happening, how businesses are transforming, businesses are closing down, new opportunities are coming up, different things like that. Where do you guys kind of see things moving, and what is one of your predictions where you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a big thing in the next like 2 to 3 years, depending on how this whole COVID thing rolls out?
Well, I can tell you the easy, obvious one up front is the digital transformation is no longer optional, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are not in the digital space today, you do not exist. With brick and mortar locations, you weren't able to be open, and if you didn't have a digital and those that did have a digital presence actually have survived or have been able to weather this a lot more effectively. And a lot of them are having to make pivots and really make changes to their business model. And it's those, you cannot continue to sell typewriters in a digital world. You have
Right.
to do an inventory of what you currently have and how you can serve. And I hate to overuse the cliche of like the new normal after COVID, but it's true. A lot of businesses, the early data is showing a lot of these businesses, particularly those in retail, food and beverage, health and fitness and whatnot, they're not coming back. They're not going to be able to reopen their doors. So when the world reopens, what is it going to look like? And I think that digital transformation is first and foremost. If you don't live in the digital space, you don't live.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Tampa, we have a really good local brewery scene here. There's tons. I mean, it's taken off in the last 5 to 7 years, something like that. But with all this, a lot of them had to shut down, or they had to change. And we kind of talk about pivot, like Ross from Friends.
Right.
They pivoted and they started getting into the hand sanitizer. A lot of them have done that. And I think that's one example how businesses who will make this on the other side, or at least they'll be able to do this to hold out long enough before they can start selling their product. Because let's face it, alcohol sales, is recession proof, except when you are forced to shut down. Outside
Right.
of that, that's something that will always be around. So if your local city, county government has a mandate and they're shut down, then what do you do? And I think those are the ones that will be able to hold off. And when things get open again, then they'll be back making their revenue like they were before. So that to me is just one example of how we're going to see this. You have to think cliche, think outside the box. What can
Right.
you do to survive? And you do it because you have to. And you have to go back and whiteboard it and see, okay, let's take a look, step back, let's brainstorm, let's whiteboard all of this. What do we have? What's at our disposal? What can we do? If you're a restaurant, we talk about, the content creation, create videos. Hey, here at, XYZ, this is how we make our pizza. Here's all the ingredients that we use. and go through it, create content that way. Now, is that going to be direct revenue? No. But if you're shut down, but your kitchen is open and you can do takeout orders and deliveries, and you never were doing it online before, now you can. Now all of a sudden you have a contract with Uber Eats or Grubhub or something like that, so that they can do the deliveries. That would be another example of that digital transformation and getting people aware, showing them all the ingredients. And here's one thing I'm never worried about is giving people all the ingredients to do something. Our ingredients are marketing. We go through and say, here's how you create a marketing campaign. I'm not going to charge you for that because, if you ever try to cook a recipe, you buy a cookbook and you try to do it. If you're not a professional chef, it's not going to taste like any of those chefs you see on the Food Network, anything like that, right? You can make it. People will always go back and, to that restaurant when they can. I think the same thing's here. Give away the ingredients. That doesn't mean they're still not going to come to you, for it. And if they never do, you still build your brand awareness. You're still going to be locked in their head. They're still going to think about you down the road. It might not be instant gratification that you're going to get a sale from that person, but they will remember you when the time is right for them. So I agree, Chris, 100%. Digital transformation, you're forced to do it now. You have to figure it out. Where there's a will, there's a way. And the biggest thing, I'm a big fan of Marie Forleo, and she came out with a book, I think it was early in 2020. And her book is Everything is Figure Outable. And it's such a great motto to live by. And businesses have to figure it out. There's a way. You just have to, figure it out. So that is the biggest thing. I agree with Chris on that.
I 100% agree. I love that. I love that saying because that's literally how I work. Throw me in the jungle and I'll work it out and I'll figure it out and get to that point. See, my thing was when all this was happening, we started seeing the transformation of like brick and mortar and restaurants and coffee shops. Some stayed open because they had the drive-through. Others had to completely shut down. For me, I feel like now the whole construction industry and everything that's being built, all the new stuff, like we have building going on all the time here in the Sacramento area. It's one of those things where I feel like every restaurant, no matter if you're high end, low end, whatever, it's actually the fine dine restaurants that are actually going out of business and never coming back because they can't do to-go orders. My thing is, aside from all the Grubhubs and everything like that, I think people are going to be forced to have a drive-through option for whatever they're doing. Have some sort of gateway, even if it's like a big window where just people pull out, you give them their food or something like that. Because as much as I love delivery, I still like going out and maybe scouring, going down the street and be like, what am I going to eat today? Like, let me kind of go into one of these places. And when you drive down and you can't really figure out what's open and what's not, rather than, having everybody pretty much be open just because they can do like sort of like the takeout model and different things like that. So I think that's going to be a huge thing going forward. And I think, Chris, you're absolutely right. If you're not on the digital platforms, I mean, we saw it happening in the beginning when people knew that things were shutting down. Everyone's jumping over to Shopify because it was so easy to set up, get up and running, get a template, throw it on there, take a couple of pictures of your products. Nothing has to be amazing. Nothing. And we had a client recently who sells wine, and they were just like, hey, we had no idea that our license even allowed us to sell wine online because it's, alcohol and all this other stuff. The minute that we figured that out, we're doing like 10 grand a month during COVID because people are buying wine online and they're having it delivered to their house or coming to pick it up at our restaurant and different things like that. So yeah, I think people just have to figure it out. They have to come up with new ideas, and they have to be almost willing to spend money to for maybe even some consulting or whatever it is to say, hey, you've been in the content marketing space, you've been in the agency, whatever that space you're in, can you give us some advice on how we can go about this? Because we don't really have anybody like that in house, and we just need to keep our business doors open. We need to continue making money. Otherwise we're all gonna, kind of shit the bed at that point.
Yeah. I love it too. Content marketing, real quick, is key. And I think every business, fine dining, local steakhouse in Clearwater, Florida, shut down. So what they do, they started doing selling their fillets, and they created like this whole basket. You order it ahead of time, call in, pay for it. You come by, you can pick it up. On Wednesdays, they do a virtual wine tasting. They do Facebook Lives, so they're always talking with their sommelier to keep it up. You can then purchase those wines, when you're doing your order and so forth. And I thought that was just a great example of a mom and pop local
I love
steakhouse that is kind of reinventing themselves. When you couldn't go inside, they took all the tables and they put it outside in the parking lot. So they covered half the parking lot. You couldn't park there, so they could continue to do business. And it's those little things. And this is Florida, by the way, where in the summertime, the heat index, it feels 105 to 110 degrees outside.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an awful experience, but they were trying to do the best they can with it. And I totally give them kudos for that. I'll take the to-go and grill it at home. But I think the big thing too is they reinvented themselves a little bit. And going to your point, I think content marketing, everybody should be in content marketing. A fine dining restaurant that you traditionally went to eat inside should be a content marketing machine.
Exactly.
All companies, whether it's a brick and mortar restaurant, should be a media company. If they start thinking we're a media company that also serves food, that serves great wine, I think that mental shift is all they need. And then they start thinking themselves, and all of a sudden it produces the content. They start creating these Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives. They do TikTok. TikTok doesn't have to be a silly dance. There's actually a lot of business that happens on TikTok. You create those, all of a sudden your brand awareness just shot through the roof. And you're letting people know, hey, while the rest of the world is shut down, we still have, our kitchen is still open. You just can't eat inside, but here's different ways. And we're going to educate you on how to create the perfect steak. We're going to educate you on the wines that you love. And this local steakhouse started doing that. And to me, I think every business, no matter what you are, should take a similar approach to that.
Absolutely.
I think businesses have to reshape the way they think too. I think there's a sense of a lot of organizations, because they're run by humans, operate out of a place of fear, right? It's not going for what you want, it's avoiding losing what you already have. And I think that this is going to change the way all of us sort of live, work, and play, right? I mean, even when we're told you can go back out into the world today, how many people are going to pack into movie theaters or restaurants the way they did before? So I think that you have to be really open to it. I mean, telecommuting is a great example. We've been able to telecommute for 20, 25 years at this point. Yeah. And yet some of the largest companies in the world didn't allow for it. Tech companies where people lived in that space, they still had to go into work every day. And all of a sudden the world shuts down and people are told you have to work remotely. And I think what that did is open people's eyes to, this does work. We're just as productive, maybe even more productive than we were before, right? And so now you've got a lot of companies announcing, we're going to embrace this. And so now if you're recruiting somebody for a position, you don't have to look in just your regional area. You can recruit them from anywhere, right? So how does that change the business landscape? So I think a lot of it is organizations are going to have to change that mindset and operate, open themselves up, be a little bit vulnerable, whether it's creating content or changing some of the business processes. They're going to have to think differently about it moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what Ryan said too is like, you have to think of yourself as a media company that sells food or sells drinks or whatever it is, because at that point you're gravitating towards a whole different market, a whole different type, like those businesses, that steakhouse that you sometimes might not even eat steak and you just can appreciate what they're doing. You might go over there and just throw a little donation in their little donation box, be like, hopefully this helps you guys stay alive at some point, because I love what you're doing. You're trying to do everything you know how to do, and you're willing to take advice from people. And I think that shows also a lot of character, I think, within the business owners and the people that are working there. So I think that's really, really awesome. So is there anything else that you guys wanted to kind of chat about on this podcast, or did we kind of cover everything at this point? I know we talked about a lot of stuff.
We did cover a lot.
Yeah, if there's nothing else, go ahead and let everybody know just where they can find you guys, how they can get in touch with you guys, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter. I know, Ryan, you don't probably want a bunch of people blowing up your LinkedIn or whatever, but
no, actually, I encourage it, honestly. And Z, that's how you and I connected, right? Here's a prime example of how social networking can work. And it never met Z in person. This was just I sent him a LinkedIn message, promoting this new podcast.
Not trying to sell anything.
What's that?
Not trying to sell anything.
Not trying to sell anything.
Yeah,
but it was just interesting.
Exactly.
But it was just, hey, like, give it a listen. Let me know what you think. If you think it sucks, I want to know that it sucks. Give me the feedback on it. And then you just started kind of going through, and you were texting me as you're listening to each one, or through LinkedIn Messenger, each one.
Yeah.
And I was excited getting your feedback. And I'm sitting there texting Chris saying, hey, this is, someone's actually listening to us. And he likes it. He really likes it. So, that was our excitement on it. So reach me out on LinkedIn. use the platforms. Before we get into this, one more
Yeah,
tidbit. Don't use the
absolutely.
platforms as a direct to sales first.
Right.
Nurture these people, provide value, give them free, give stuff away for free. Your knowledge, educate, how-tos, guides, whatever it is, give that away for free. LinkedIn is a great way to do it. Don't abuse it by connecting with people and completely just selling your services. If you do it organically and you provide knowledge, the algorithms will pick you up. They'll start sharing it to more. People will start learning about you. And then through the LinkedIn message, they might reach out to you saying, hey, I like what you're doing. Hey, do you do this type of service? Can you help me here? And I think
Right.
that's where it'll reach out. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, Ryan Smith Marketing. If you type those 3 words in, you'll find it. Or go to Araxam, type in Araxam on LinkedIn, Araxam. And then you can always find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's Ryan Smith FLA, as in Florida, Ryan Smith FLA. So that's where you can find me.
Yep, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. On Twitter, you can find me at Real Chris Casale, RealChrisCasale. And of course, as Ryan mentioned, Araxam is where we post a lot of our guides, how-tos, and other free information for getting your business off the ground and marketing. And of course, Digital Marketing Happy Hour. Give it a listen and tell us what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say, and not to be biased or anything, I love the podcast. I listened to it right away when you sent it over to me, Ryan, and I truly enjoyed the conversations that you have with some of the people on there. And so I do want to say great job on that, by the way, and everything that you guys are doing. And I'll also make sure to post all this, in the notes at the bottom of the podcast and in YouTube and everything else, so that people can reach out to you guys. And we'll continue the conversation on our different platforms that we have as well. So thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing all the knowledge. I truly hope that people do have a good sense of what they need to do to survive, and also the tools that they can use that are free and how they can use them. And, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Chris or Ryan directly. Reach out to me and I'll get you connected over to them, however you want to do it, whatever is easier. And yeah, just thank you guys again for sharing your knowledge. I think it goes a long way with people, and hopefully the Googles will pick this up, and maybe, people will learn a few things and come to you guys and let you know that, hey, this is what I picked up here, and this is what we need to do for our business in terms of content marketing and different things. So thank you guys so much for sharing all that knowledge. I really apprget it.
Pleasure was ours. This was a blast. We got to have you on the happy hour one time.
There we go. Yeah. Bring your drinks.
Yeah, we'll figure. Yeah, exactly. I'll get in touch with you guys and we'll figure something out. I would love to do that. That sounds amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Z.
All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
Bye.